This portrait from the National Maritime Museum in Greenwich shows a confident young man, his hands resting on his sheathed sword, proudly posing in front of a fortress he helped capture. The young lad before us would grow into a man who would change the course of history, for he is none other than Horatio Nelson. The piece was painted by the Turin-born French artist Jean-Francis Rigaud. The portrait dates to the closing stages of the American War of Independence, when it was becoming evident that the United States' newly proclaimed sovereignty was an irreversible fact. Nevertheless, Britain continued its efforts in the West Indies, fighting against the American allies, France and Spain, in order to secure a favorable position in Central America before peace negotiations started. One of these operations was the San Juan expedition. This campaign took place in what is now Nicaragua, aiming to capture the strategically important towns of Granada and León. Early successes included the conquest of the Fortress of the Immaculate Conception, located 5 miles upstream on the southern bank of the San Juan River. This is the fortification we see in the background of the painting. At the time, Horatio Nelson, still a young captain, played a crucial role in the battle. He was responsible for leading his men through dense jungle to attack the fortress from the hills in the rear. These hills are still called the Lomas de Nelson to this day, which is Spanish for the Nelson Hills. Although the expedition ultimately ended in disaster, the painter still included this place of triumph in the portrait. The painting was started in 1777, when Nelson was still a lieutenant, and wasn't completed until 1781, by which time Nelson had been promoted to captain. As a result, Rigaud had to modify the uniform to reflect Nelson's new rank, a change revealed through X-ray analysis. This portrait is part of a series commissioned by Captain William Locker, who wanted portraits of promising young officers like Nelson. Locker, a notable patron of the arts, also supported artists like Dominique Serres, and it is believed that Serres later added the fortress in the background, probably at Locker's request, after Nelson had returned from the San Juan campaign. Locker had been one of Nelson's earliest commanders, serving as his captain aboard HMS Lowestoft when Nelson was still a lieutenant. A close friendship developed between them, lasting for many years. Locker kept the portrait nearby and later displayed it at Greenwich Hospital, where he became lieutenant governor in 1793. After Nelson's fame grew following his heroism at the Battle of Cape St. Vincent in 1797, Locker had the portrait turned into an engraving by Robert Chipster of Woolwich, making it the first published image of Nelson. The artist Rigaud was born in Turin and pursued his studies there, as well as in Bologna. He spent 2 years in Rome from 1768 before settling in London in 1771. The following year, he became an associate of the Royal Academy, advancing to full academician status in 1784. Throughout his career, Rigaud received a constant flow of commissions for historical subjects, as well as decorative compositions and portraits. He was a prominent painter of large-scale decorative schemes for the fashionable interiors of the late 18th century. As a portrait artist, his work was often frank and expressive when not aiming for heroic representations. The painting in question is signed and inscribed Captain Horatio Nelson, 1781, though this inscription was added later.